It's time for Mr. Fundamental!
Presented by no one.
After a wild first two rounds of the playoffs, we have ourselves a Western Conference Finals matchup between the Lakers and the Nuggets. While no one ever takes a LeBron James-led team lightly, the Nuggets just became the first team to come back from a 3-1 deficit in 2 playoff series. This is a pretty interesting matchup that I didn't think would happen, but it's 2020 and it's full of twists and turns. Both teams have their pros and cons, but would have to be at their A game for the series. So let's look at what both teams need to do to come out on top. Starting off with the Lakers. After a small ball series against the Rockets, Frank Vogel just told all of us that the Lakers will return to form and deploy their dual big lineup. This in itself has its pros and cons. AD would be back in his comfort zone, working against smaller defenders like Millsap and Grant, where he can just shoot over the top. The Nuggets were more likely to send double teams in these situations, and the Lakers could let the Nuggets experience what Jokic does to their opponents. These dual big lineups will also let the Lakers go back to what they were doing in the regular season, and I made a video on this earlier. With AD, McGee, and Howard, no defense has that combination of height and hops to outreach the Lakers' big man. In order to stop this, the weak side defender has to rotate earlier and deeper into the paint to take away AD's runway. By doing so, they're giving up practice shots from deep to NBA players, which no defense is gonna do. The green drive forces Jokic to step up. Craig needed to be fronting McGee to take away his jump. That doesn't happen, and they draw a foul on their best player, which we'll get into later. Rondo's resurgence in the Rockets series was actually a byproduct of this. He's a willing facilitator who threw these on-point lobs. The Lakers went out to get more shooting in Waiters and JR, but not only are they not knocking down shots, they're not lobbing it up to their bigs either. That improved 3-ball by playoff Rondo is just an added bonus to what he already brings to the table. If the Lakers are struggling with their 3-ball, these lobs would be a lifesaver. Another method to maximize their offense in dual big lineups is to seal off the help. See how Dwight carves out space for the drive and takes a shot blocker out of the equation. Here's the same thing, and even an average creator off the dribble in Morris gets the bucket to fall. Defensively, dual big lineups will be a mixed bag. It could work, since there are more big bodies to switch or pre-switch onto Jokic. Jokic is still too good offensively to get shut down completely, but keeping a big man on him will limit the need for double teams, where the Nuggets are at their best. Here's a mismatch in the post, which is why AD is constantly jabbing at Jokic. The kickout gets AD out of position, Murray attacks off the catch, and gets all the way to the rim. The real advantage of playing AD as center lies on the offensive end, but the defense could still be effective. With AD as center, it's not like the Lakers went small. They still have 2 6'9" forwards in LeBron and Kuzma. Murray forces the switch and takes the ball back out. AD could definitely hang with Murray on the perimeter, but the secret sauce is pre-switching LeBron on Jokic in the post. I mean, Jokic could still put the ball in the basket, but doubling isn't a must compared to Caruso on Jokic. Then we have the argument for playing AD as center. Here's what we've learned from the previous playoff series. Jokic's defense was untested in the Nuggets' first 2 matchups. He was up against Gobert and Zubac for most of the series, which allowed him to sag back into the paint. Deploying a dual big lineup will let Jokic guard either McGee or Howard, and help minimize his defensive limitations. In the Blazers series, playing AD as center caused all sorts of trouble for a lumbering big like Nurkic. In the Rockets series, we saw Vogel's willingness to make adjustments and throw the dual big lineup out the window. Both of these will come hand in hand against the Nuggets, since Jokic is similar mode to Nurkic, and having AD attacking him on the perimeter should be an emphasis. But a dual big lineup might not let them take full advantage of that. With the Nuggets' late switch coverages, the Lakers could force a lot of switches and attack Murray and Jokic individually. The Nuggets' offense is pretty hard to stop, but forcing their stars to defend one-on-one and getting them into foul trouble would definitely help. So getting them matched up with LeBron and AD is a good recipe for success. The main thing the Lakers need to do is to learn from all the Clippers' mistakes. I've covered this in my last video on the Clippers-Nuggets series, and here are the main highlights. The Nuggets' best defenders are all on the wing, so don't settle and isolate on them. Like I said before, focus on getting a switch off Jokic or Murray on LeBron or AD. This is possible even in dual big lineups. The Clippers got Jokic to show up higher whenever they ran handoffs or flipped the screen. Another method is running high ball screens. This again forced Jokic to guard in space due to a potential pull-up 3, and no one can keep up with LeBron going downhill. A LeBron and AD pick and roll is the Lakers' go-to move, but a dual big lineup will let Millsap and Grant switch, and the offense returns to square one. The same happened with the Clippers, where the Kawhi and PG screens were just switched by their best defenders, leading to another ISO. That's why I'm expecting more of these guard screens or inverted pick and rolls to get beneficial matchups for the Lakers and start bending the defense. The last thing for the Lakers is to sag back on off-ball players, especially when Jokic has the ball. This is risky against NBA teams, but the Lakers got burned way too many times on the backdoor cuts. To make things worse, these possessions were ran by the bench unit against the Lakers starters. Yikes. The Nuggets aren't a great shooting team, especially with inconsistent shooters like Grant and Craig on the floor most of the time. They beat the Clippers by hurting them on dives and cuts instead. The bottom line is that the Lakers should rotate down and pack the paint first before recovering on their shooters, at least until the Nuggets prove they can knock down shots consistently. Moving on to the Nuggets, I've mentioned quite a few things for them earlier. Jokic and the Nuggets should celebrate if the Lakers are going to play their duo bigs. Jokic sagging in the paint against non-stretch bigs is one of the things that got them here. Jokic's defense has improved a lot, but he's still at his best staying in the paint. He has a better feel of when to show on screens, and this mostly happens in those handoffs or flip screens. If McGee and Howard's on the floor, Jokic won't have to defend in space. This way, they could keep their best defenders in Grant, Craig, Harris, and Millsap on the Lakers stars, which is the only way they'll beat the Lakers. Without pull-up threats off of screens beside LeBron, the Nuggets could play even more conservative defense compared to the Jazz and Clippers series. On the other hand, the Nuggets do have pull-up threats in Murray, Harris, and Morris. This would force the Lakers bigs to show up higher on screens, and a short roll Jokic will be in full effect. It's obvious that both Murray and Jokic will need to stay hot in order to make the Lakers pay when they sag the pick and roll. The most important thing for the Nuggets is to continue the team offense like they did against the Clippers, advantage of Jokic's versatility, like this inverted pin down. It catches the Lakers off guard and they draw the foul. Assuming the Lakers do some of the stuff I've outlined earlier, that means Kuzma or smaller perimeter players are in the game. This could be the time for the Nuggets to post up MPJ, Millsap, and even Grant. This could draw double teams, and the Nuggets are back in their natural habitat. Mike Malone was quick to adjust in the Clippers series. One of them was posting up Lou Will with Grant, and this created another double team and an open shot from deep. When the Clippers put Morris on Jokic, they ran the pick and pop with Millsap instead, and it generated another good look out on top. They did the same thing to the Lakers when McGee was Millsap. The slip gets McGee out of position, and a great dime by MPJ. What I didn't realize this year is Jamal Murray's postgame. He doesn't do it a lot, but he's insanely effective. What's even better is that he's been cooking Danny Green in the post throughout the regular season. This could lead to switches or double teams, but the end result is the same, which is bending the Lakers' defense out of shape. The last thing for the Nuggets is that they need Jokic to be aggressive. The Nuggets don't stand a chance if he's passive, like last year when he could go 3 quarters without a shot attempt. The X factors for the Lakers would be Danny Green, who hasn't been shooting too bad throughout the playoffs, but we all know he can do better. He always seems to save the best for last, like how he shot 10% from deep during the Bucks series last year, but then stepped up in the finals. Most importantly, the Nuggets help a lot off of the corners. Not only are the Lakers top 10 in corner threes attempted, but this is also Green's sweet spot as well. If you think this analysis was a little lopsided in favor of the Lakers, that's because I talked a lot about the Nuggets in my last video, so I've left the link to that in the description. It's much harder to pinpoint an X factor for the Nuggets due to their team basketball and depth. MPJ would seem like the easiest choice with his huge upside, but his minutes were cut down because of his defense. While Millsap and Grant's defense on the Lakers stars will be crucial, I think Gary Harris will be the ultimate X factor. Not only is his defense valuable, but he's more impactful on the offensive end than his number suggests. Harris is also one of their most consistent shooters among role players, and it hasn't been long since he put up almost 18 points a night on very efficient numbers. With the absence of Barton, the Nuggets need Harris to turn back the clock and provide reliable production as their third option. Personally, I'm rooting for the Nuggets since they're the underdogs and their team basketball is so easy to fall in love with. They actually don't have much pressure since no one expected them to be here. Also, both teams have a very different approach to building the roster and being where they are right now. The Lakers mortgaged their future to get another superstar. The Nuggets were just a normal franchise adding pieces together through different methods and hit some bumps along the way. What gets overlooked is the Nuggets' chemistry and continuity of the roster. This is why they can play the way they do. Realistically, the star power of LeBron and AD gives the Lakers a much bigger margin for error, and playoff LeBron is just a beast. So for my prediction, Lakers in 6. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to drop a like down below, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.